so much for being here. This is a great group that will get us moving. There is so much to share and talk about. So I am looking forward to another very packed and stimulating meeting. So I want to first start by letting everyone welcome. I'm sure all of you know Joan Hartman, who is the Vice President of Strategy and Public Policy for Chestnut Health Systems. And she's been very involved in the ongoing 211 marketing campaign. So it's really good to have her here as kind of that continuity piece for us on this. And so we're very glad to have you, Joan. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I just wanted to again remind us what our role is, because it's so easy. There are so many strands of everything that we're all dealing with, in addition to so many societal factors that are impacting just the need for mental health and the issues with substance use and everything. And so just to kind of make sure we're real clear on what our lane is in all of this is, you know, we're a committee of a committee of the Board of Health. So that's kind of interesting. And our role really is to just kind of take in information and digest, help with prioritizing what can be done to better market behavioral health services and substance use services, to better market them and to get particularly to those people who have been overly impacted by COVID, social injustice, all the disparities we know, and who have typically underutilized behavioral health anyway because of some stigma that comes out of cultural backgrounds and things. And so we're really wanting to reach the broad community, but we're wanting to also make sure we are taking extra measures to reach the most impacted neighborhoods and communities in our county, in our cities. So does that sound familiar? Is that everybody's understanding of what we're about? Okay. And I also thought, because following 7 habits, seek first to understand, then to be understood. I want to make sure that everybody knows this is a truly open process, and we don't want anything decided ahead of time. But I do have some things that we've gathered additional information on that I want to share with you that kind of directs us in a certain way. But I also want to be clear that you are a mind trust and a networking group that I have such respect for, that I also want to make sure you know always that your ideas and input are hugely important. So I'm going to throw open first, as you've thought about this over the last couple months since we started talking about this, has anything bubbled forward for you that you really want to make sure we look at during today's meeting? And then I'm going to be silent and let you all speak. Okay, Judy, you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, and it's, I think our plate is getting fuller and fuller. And after we discuss the conversation you and I had with David and Karen, I think we will see we've added some things to it. So nothing's bubbled up for me other than that, in addition to what we've already talked about doing. I think at this point we have a short range and a much longer range list of things that we could engage in.
Thank you, Judy. And I think that is our goal today, is that we want to kind of lay some things on the table, and then really need your help in prioritizing which of those things on the table we're going to pick up and run with, because the need is exhausting and overwhelming, but I'm so hopeful that there are some very concrete things we can do. So, but we need your help in, really getting those priorities straight. So starting with, I wanted to talk, Judy and I had a very long Zoom conversation with David Taylor of United Way. I'm sure you all know that. And Karen Zangerly of PATH. And I think Judy and I, afterwards, we stayed on the line because we were blown away by what happened in that meeting. It was kind of truly amazing, because where we were at was David and Karen both articulating, as I think you would all agree, that what's happening now, I mean, this was all around the election time too. So in addition to, like we talked about, social injustice, all the anxiety around the election, which clearly is going to continue if we're lucky until December. And then, of course, COVID and the fact that the numbers are ticking way back up again. So both of Karen and David were articulating that they anticipate January to March to be pretty awful, even more awful than the first round hit us in March, because without a second stimulus package, the eviction notices, which have been on hold, will probably go off of hold, and we will see, and Mary can probably speak to this, we will see homelessness like we've not seen. We will see utility issues. We will see food. I mean, and I've heard food distribution centers are running short of food and all of this. So we know that we have to be ready for a brutal January to March at the very least. And so I feel like some of the things we need to do are kind of meeting that immediate crisis and then figuring out the beyond that. So, so to that end, Karen shared with us that the numbers at PATH, have started ticking back up again, and that they are not happy in that they are not always now able to meet their standards that they're held to by their accrediting body, which is like answering within a certain number of seconds and not having more than a certain number of drop calls. And they're okay. I mean, they're still they're still incredibly fast in responding, but they're seeing their stats drop below where they want to be. So as we talked about that, the thing that came forward was maybe we need to add a warm line, which would be a line that would be for just people who are not in crisis, not deeply depressed, not deeply in need of, deep treatment or intervention at that moment, but just need some ongoing support. And so Karen, after the call, did some investigation. She went back, talked to her team, talked to their liability insurance coverer, looked up some costs and things. And so she's very willing, with help, to add a line that would be what would be a warm line that would take support only kinds of calls, and that would be manned by volunteers that would not have to have the same level of training that her current volunteers have. So she would need $80 a month and she's recommending that we do that as a pilot because we don't know how much it'll be used. So she's recommending we decide if we want to do that for 3 or 6 months, but at least to get us through January through March minimally, $80 a month for that line, and then some part-time supervisory staff, one part-time supervisory staff person that would supervise that, because clearly, again, these would be newer volunteers, and so they would need support. And obviously it would be critical that the volunteers would know that they had to hand off to different level of supports if the caller needed more than just the warm line support. Go ahead, Joan.
Is there a reason why we wouldn't just use the state's warm line?
I had a long talk with Sue Pirtle. Sue Pirtle is at Center for Human Services, and the Call for Calm line, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And you are Chestnut and CHS are both, they answer that, is that right?
No, the state has contracted with other folks to do that. We're not one of them in this region. We are down in Southern.
So I'm so glad you asked that. And help me out here, people. When I'm getting too far in the weeds, please, I need somebody to, give me the sign, because I can get way into weeds, everybody. So, but just to answer Joan's question, which is very good. Yes, Judy, go ahead.
Yeah, and I direct this to Joan, so that, because we were looking at this as a possibility. Joan, who in our region, or do you know, is the designated person or entity to receive these calls for COM?
CHS
Sorry.
is. CHS is one.
Is CHS doing it? They are one. And so are they doing it now? Do we know?
Yes. I just had a long conversation with Sue about that. And they are doing it now, and they're only getting about one call a week right now. So it's clearly not being used very much. She said right in March, when it first opened up and when Governor Pritzker was first advertising it so much. And again, just so everybody knows what I'm talking about, this is a state line called Call for Calm. And it was marketed by the state for people that want it. It was saying, help is here to talk to someone about if you have fears and anxieties and need information about COVID. That was how it was marketed. And CHS they said they got a fair number of calls at first, but then it just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. She said now they get about one a week. And what it is people call in to this Call for Calm, and then the Call for Calm people actually call the designated community person, and then that person, then they call the person back. So nobody answers. The person who calls in does not get an immediate response. They have to wait until their designated local agency calls them back. Now, the center said they have tried very hard to call back within an hour for the most part, but if they call in the middle of the night, like at 2:00, they don't call until the next morning, because again, it's not meant to be a crisis line. It's just meant to be a support line. Sue did not feel like the PATH warm line would be a duplication of services, because she said, number one, this Call for Calm has not had wide use. And number two, it seems to be kind of removed from the community. You know what I mean? It's like, and so again, we would have to decide, do we want to market that as well? So go ahead, Judy.
Question then, you mentioned, and I read all the stuff out of the governor's office, but anyway, I missed this one. Was this intended to be only for COVID related questions? And part of the reason I'm asking that is that the health department is in the process of going to a call center with staff that will be prepared to answer COVID questions. So is CHS, was the governor's intent to be a human service agency that could respond to COVID questions, or do we know?
It was meant, I believe, and I did not have time to look it up after Sue and I just talked. But I do remember when it first came out, and then I had totally forgotten about it until Sue mentioned it again today. I believe it was for, and if somebody wants to look it up while we're talking here, that would be great. I believe it was to just deal with anxiety and confusion and uncertainty related to COVID. So, and I think the 211 campaign we're talking about would be much bigger than that. And I think the warm line through PATH would be much bigger than that, although clearly, some of the anxiety and depression and isolation, which would spur the calls, would be COVID related, but not entirely. So so anybody have any thoughts about how that kind of would possibly work together? Okay.
Did, when Karen talked about the warm line, she spoke about volunteers answering these calls that actually would still be in their homes. So that was one piece of it. When you spoke with her, Corey, did she talk about a separate number, or is this going to be, are these calls going in through the 211 and then being patched out, or where are we with that?
I didn't ask that specifically. My guess would be it would still be 211 so that we would not confuse the issue.
Exactly.
But I mean, we can, and again, that's why today I don't want to go too deep in the weeds here about even sorting out exactly how much money we want to allocate to what. I mean, I really want to say more as a, what do we prioritize for needed services for the community? And then so that you have a rough ballpark of the cost. But, you know, I think when we bring this back to the full board, we will have to have everything, you know, everything very detailed, but we don't need to worry about that today. I don't want to waste our time on, you know, parsing a number. But again, if the warm line, as I said, would be $80 a month for any, deciding whether 3 to 6 months. And then Karen had said she anticipates that she would want a 20-hour-a-week person that would again be kind of only be employed maybe only for 6 months, because again, so kind of like a pilot. So until we know whether it's really going to be used or not. And she was looking at a number of about $20 an hour, 20 hours a week at $13 an hour, and coming out for 6 months, that would be somewhere around $6,250. And then you would add, she mentioned taxes that have to be paid on that, so about another 400 and something. So somewhere around $6,490 for the person that would supervise and help gather volunteers, market, and you know, be the supervisor for this warm line. So that would be, so you can get a rough idea of that. She would need the help of the community to come up with volunteers. She's thinking that it would not run through, you know, late hours, so nobody would have to man anything in the middle of the night. We would be talking about, because again, this is not crisis or urgency. This is more standing in the gap. I talked to Sue Pirtle today about, would this be helpful to, if they have people on a waiting list to get into counseling, or any entity, if there's a waiting list to get into counseling because maybe they don't fit the insurance that gets them into counseling. Could the warm line help somebody kind of as an interim support while they're waiting to get in? And Sue Pirtle thought that would be reasonable. So that's another, you know, because again, I've been so worried about how we build capacity to just have support for people in these coming brutal months. So, okay, I'm going to shut up and have you weigh in on what you think about this warm line supervisory, and also knowing that we have to help get volunteers.
Corey, could you go back just a minute to the beginning where you talked about how this warm line is envisioned to structurally work? A person knows that they only need a warm line, and so they call the warm line, or a person calls some line and they get rerouted to the warm line. That's why I kind of got lost in that weed.
That's because I didn't answer that. So thank you for being so tactful. No, I believe how it would work. And again, you know, we would have to really sort this out very carefully. But I believe that's why it would go to 211, and then whoever answers the 211 call would help route it to the right place. You know, so because right now, PATH does statistics on the nature of every call that comes in, and they have some right now that are support. They call them support only. They have some that are, you know, suicide. They have some that are, you know, need just, you know, resources, whatever. And so it would not be a whole lot different. I think they would just identify what type of call it was and then direct it to the right person. And again, as Judy mentioned, these could be people that are sitting in their home, in their living room, and they are just taking a 2 to 4 hour shift, you know, and they agree to do that, you know, once a week and again, we would maybe only ask for a 3-month commitment or a 6-month commitment or something like that, because until we know for sure it's going to, you know, be used, we don't, you know, want to go too deeply into it, but we also need to give it time to get off the ground as well. So did that answer your question, Mary?
Mostly. So the person who's the hub of this whole operation is the 211 person who has to be extremely well trained to distinguish what the person calling in's needs are. And then then that person says, it's 2 a.m. Someone will get back to you tomorrow on our warm line. Because there's nobody who takes those calls at night.
Well,
Or
PATH would still be taking those calls. So PATH, if they are getting calls in the middle of the night and they have the availability to do it, they would go ahead and do it. But if they are, if they are having a large number at a given time, then this warm line would be available to direct it to that. And every PATH volunteer now is already trained in identifying what type of call they're dealing with. So that's not going to be new. The only thing new really is there's now going to be another, I guess if you look at it on a continuum of support, that we just added a layer of support at the less risk level. And so it could be people that are repeat callers. I mean, PATH has some people that call all the time because they just literally need to hear a friendly voice. So perhaps they could shift some of those people to this warm line, or that kind of thing. So, and again, Mary, Mary, this is in preliminary, so there's a lot of details to be worked out. But I don't think we'd be taking anything away from what PATH currently offers. If PATH's available at 2 a.m, they would take the 2 a.m. call. Yeah.
Maureen had her hand up.
So you're looking at this as overflow for PATH.
Not necessarily overflow. I mean, yes, it could be overflow. It really would be to just have like I said, if you think of a continuum of need, and so this would be meeting the need of people who are not in a crisis urgent state, but are anxious, are lonely, are, sad, are, it's winter, it's they're feeling like I haven't seen my grandchildren for a long time, or I haven't seen my best friend for a long time, or whatever. So they would just, it's more for that kind of a call versus some of the calls PATH gets, which are very much about, I'm extremely depressed. I'm thinking about, hurting myself, or I just, I can't sleep anymore. I can't eat anymore. I think, so it would just be for a different level of call that they don't, that they take. But like you're saying, then in that sense, I guess it would be overflow because they could deflect some of those to somebody else.
I wanted to indicate too that I'm on the state DHS website, and it does talk about, besides the call for calm text and talk line, there's an Illinois warm line that says if you or one of your family members has mental health and or substance use challenges and would like to receive support by phone, call the Illinois warm line, and then it gives the number. They have wellness support specialists, are professionals who have experienced mental health and or substance use recovery of their own lives, and they're trained in recovery support, mentoring, and advocacy, and are ready to listen and support you. They have that from Monday through Friday, except holidays, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So I would think we'd want to have them get the calls during those hours and then augment those maybe after hours.
Here, and I, and Sue Pertl and I talked about that too. She also mentioned that. And Joan, and I so agree. I'm so grateful to try to sort this out, because we really do need to do this as a community. I think my fear is that if we as a marketing group try to put out several different options, like if you're this, call this. If you're this, call this. If you're this, call this.
No,
then
I was
feel
thinking that, Corey, I was thinking that the folks at 211 would connect them with that number, not that we would advertise that number.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That makes sense. Okay. So thank you for that. So clearly we need to, like, again, we need a whole nother meeting, with Path, I think, and probably anybody who is an answerer of those calls. Like CHS and Path really need, and obviously they're in partnership anyway, but then they just need to really talk about that call for comm line and how that's going to intersect. And this Illinois line, the one thing that Sue talked about that she's a little concerned about is that if you start getting a state line, they don't always know the resources, the local resources. And so then they can't, if somebody needs something locally, that state line may not know who in Bloomington Normal or who in McLean County would be the best person to refer them to. So that would be a concern, but I think we need to sort it all out. So, and it's interesting that we haven't done that prior to this. It's interesting that we haven't, as a community, really looked at how do these all intersect. So sounds like that's one of our necessary next step.
We had a lot of food that we had been given that was not appropriate for families, but more for like individual kind of servings. Well, the 211 number had no idea what I was talking about, and so they could only give me Home Sweet Home and Safe Harbor. So I concluded from that they weren't from this area and not really all that knowledgeable about our resources. So that got me wondering where they were and who pays for them and what their purpose is. Why do the calls not just go directly to PATH? Why do we have that? I get it if you're like out in a very rural area and you don't have any local resources, but McLean County, Bloomington Normal is the hub. So it seems to me that, anyway, I'm just curious how that works.
Mary, now you said you called 211. Did you call the local number and somehow then got connected with the state?
Wait a second. We called.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm trying to think how that routed. I was talking with the 211 person.
Okay.
Mary, while you're thinking about that, let me just point out one thing.
Okay.
It may come to Bloomington, but their information is only as good as the information that people have put into their system. So if Abundant Life hadn't put any of their information into the resource guide, then they probably wouldn't have that. And I was looking through the online resource guide and noticed that Chestnut was missing. They were missing a lot of Chestnut programs. And so I asked our community support team to make sure to get with PATH to make sure that all of our stuff is in there. And I just think that there's a lot of community resources that are not in there for them to be able to refer to.
Thank you. That's very well. Abundant Life is several years old, but I did speak with the person afterwards and told them that that the lines were not aware of them and that they needed to get in contact with them and get their information in. So that's exactly right, Joan.
And that's really very good, because one of the people I spoke with in the recent days about this project mentioned that they were concerned that maybe the PATH directory wasn't as complete or as up to date as it needed to be, and that other entities are creating their own resource lists. So I know that's, we're kind of taking a step back, but we need a central point with a very well-defined and current resource list. And we may not have that.
Now, I believe on the next Tuesday, we have the Behavioral Health Priority Action Team through the Community Health Improvement Plan. Many of you are on that committee. We probably need to mention that there again to make sure that everybody's got their information updated, and also figure out a way to get a call out to every entity in the county that wants to be, a service provider of any form to send that into PATH. Because again, do you all agree that we have designated PATH to be the central location for that? So I think that's where we want to go. I need to just sign something for a minute. I have somebody wonderful here that's fixing something.
While she's looking, Mary, you mentioned abundant life and maybe what's
Wonderful.
there's some sources right now that really need food badly. Do we distinguish between contributing food for individuals living alone as versus families? Or do we just take whatever is given?
I'm sorry, was that, I couldn't hear all of it because of Corey's,
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Back.
that's okay. It was giving feedback on my line, so would you repeat it, Judy?
Yeah, I'll talk with you separately later.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mhm.
I would just fill in time here.
Okay, so is this something that we want to pursue? And again, looking at trying to get the right players together to make sure we understand how the intersection of 211, Call for Calm, and the Illinois Warm Line work, and and then how we can make sure that we're maximizing using each of them appropriately, so that we're not duplicating, but that we're also getting people to a line that has the best possible information for them. Do we agree that that's something we want to pursue?
I, for one, think that's a good idea because, as been suggested, I think by Mary, we have this one thing in place now, and maybe it needs to be reviewed and maybe updated, revised, whatever. But rather than promoting different kinds of things, if we can find a way to 211 is, I think, what we want to use, rather than recreating another resource outlet for people.
I agree.
But I appreciate Joan's comments about let's also use what's already available and to fill in gaps, so that we, what we build is not,
Right.
So we can build a full system without having to.
And that would come as we try to figure out how they are interfacing, or if they are. Because the more resources than we have available, the better, in terms of our pushing it out and getting people to use it.
You know what kills me though? This is such a good example, and thank you, Mary. It's so good. I mean, that's why if we don't try these systems out ourselves, we don't know if they work or not. So thank God you tried them out, Mary, because I know you're always helping somebody get something. So, but I feel like, this tells me how badly we need to fix our marketing, because here we're the ones that are supposed to know stuff, and we don't even know how this works. So how in God's name can we expect somebody, in a desperate situation with limited resources to know where they're supposed to go? So boy, do we need this. Okay. So I guess you would say we kind of have consensus that we should pursue, seeing how all that works. And before pursue the warm line through PATH, but make sure that we do it by efficiently and effectively putting it into play with all the other things that are also available. Do we have consensus on that? And can I just see a show of hands whether we have consensus on that? Okay, thank you. And yeah, okay. Any more questions about that before we move on to another topic? Oh, and I did just think of one other thing. Other than through the Behavioral Health Priority Action Team meeting to remind everybody to update their information to PATH, does anyone here have other ideas about how to get that word out? Go ahead, Mary, please.
Well, one of the ways is through the Action Research Center that runs out of Illinois Wesleyan. The list of participants of social service agencies, that's at least one good way. She has an email that it's Deb Halprin. She sends out an email to all the people who have signed up for that Action Research Center collaboration, and it was originally sponsored by State Farm. They used to provide lunch when people could get together, so I think they're still involved. But that would reach a lot of even smaller operations than like our largest agencies. But that would be one. I don't have any. A lot of agencies now have public, what do you call it, development offices within them, and maybe they would be one who could pull everything together for that organization. And Joan is at a big organization, so she probably has a lot more ideas there.
Yeah, go ahead, Joan, please.
There are two other coalitions, committees, groups, whatever we want to call them. One is the Human Service Council that Chantel at the Children's Home and Aid, she coordinates that one. And then Holly Ambule pulls people together through Illinois Partners. And so those could be two additional resources.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. These are great. And now would we, after we get that information from these three sources, would we still want that to go through PATH though? I mean, is it that we really want PATH to be connected to these three other clearinghouses? Do you think? I mean,
well, I'm wondering if it would be best for PATH to give us whatever way they get the information to put into their PATH directory, and then we just help send that out.
Awesome. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, wonderful. That's a good punctuation point on this conversation. Go, Tricia.
Violet Pavlik is the contact at PATH who has the right form. And if you need her email, I could send it to you after the meeting is over. It's about a 2-page Word document of specific information they request, but I was also going to comment and make a comment very similar to Joan's. I think if we have each of those primary entities, both Deb with Wesleyan, Holly, and then the Human Service Council through Chantel, I think we're probably reaching a number, if not all, of the social service agencies within the community to get that information and push it out.
This feels really good. Thank you so much. That would be wonderful to get. And again, I'm hoping we could have that so that when this, as things continue to get so bad, we're ready to go with everything. So thank you so much for this great information. Tricia, do you want to talk to us about how you want to add Triage Center into our marketing plan? Have you thought much about that? And has that already happened? And what else do we need to know and do?
Well, so I still contend from some of our past meetings that I don't want to send mixed messages to the community. So while I want and appreciate, and so this is where I also struggle a little bit with potential conflict of interest and whether I should be voicing an opinion about how we market a program I oversee or not, is I don't know. But I think consistent messaging to the community is important. And so routing people through 211. So again, and this came up in one of our last meetings, I don't agree with sending the message of, if in these circumstances, call this number, in these circumstances, go here. In terms of like public marketing, I think that becomes really complicated. So in the interest of, if we're doing one marketing campaign, I think it's better suited to market 211 who knows about triage and can refer folks to us. If it were to be separate, then I think that's a completely different thing, and that potentially supplements what I'm already doing for advertising, and I think that's a different discussion. But I would also say I would recuse myself from a vote on that particular issue, because for me, it seems like a conflict of interest. But in terms of one marketing campaign, I support 211 instead.
Thank you. That's very helpful to feel like that's the right direction to go. And I think that's what I'm hearing from everybody over and over is the cleanest and most streamlined thing we can possibly do is, you know, one number, one visual graphic that everybody can connect it with and all of that. Now, Amy, did you send them that graphic that I sent you, the coping 211? You all got a copy of the coping 211 graphic? Yeah, okay, she's saying you should have. They should have, did it come, was it attached to the agenda? Yeah, okay, everybody's got it, okay. Everybody's got that. So I think we probably want to stay with that. Is that correct? Or do we want to, I mean, I think we want to somehow keep that present if that's become pretty familiar to people. Now, Judy and I, when we were talking to David and Karen, also talked about the billboards, because that's something that we had all talked about, is whether that, you know, should be part of the marketing. And what I have learned is that there are 3 billboards. This is from Karen Zangerly as of yesterday. And she did not have exact addresses, but one is near State Farm South. One is on West Market Street. And one is on kind of North Veterans, where the old Cubs grocery store was, for those of you that have been around for a while, but kind of North Veterans. And she said that right now, they pay by the number of sides of the billboards. So one has one side and 2 have 2 sides. So they pay $90 each for each side of each sign per month. So right now, and Karen tells me that this is a pretty fantastic deal that they cut path. And so they pay $360 a month for these 3 billboards. And they are paid up through December. But then, did you get the feeling, Judy, I did, that they don't really have budgeted to go on after December? I mean, they think it should continue, but it's not necessarily in PATH's budget to continue it. So that would be something that but go ahead, Judy, I'll let you.
I think they think it has been helpful, but you know, they can't confirm that. And what I'd like to throw into the mix right now too, just for future discussion, is bus ads. You know, the back of the bus might get more visibility than a billboard, which is flashing when you're driving on Veterans at 45 miles an hour. If you're sitting behind the bus or driving behind the bus, there's ads inside too, but the back of the bus, if you think about the number of buses on the streets well into the evening now, as well as on weekends, that might be another place, or maybe in lieu of even of billboards. I've been sort of wrestling with that. I don't have any suggested prices for us, but I wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that is a good thing. You know what? I think I just gave you misinformation, because I think if I add up the 2 of the billboards are 2-sided and 1 is 1-sided, that comes out to $450 a month, not $360. I just corrected my own math. So again, and I don't think today we are going to set the numbers, but I want you to understand roughly what costs are as we're thinking about these things so that we, so we know if you think that's a good use of money.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Shall I know we're not going to be deciding this, but is there a consensus that I should check with Connect Transit and even see what might be available, for example, on the side or the rear of a bus, and what kind of rates, non-for-profit, because I know we've made a distinction there. Is there any, and shall I do that so we have that for consideration? Any reason why, if you don't think that we should, let me know. Okay, I'm calling.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Judy, would you also find out what it costs to have them inside?
Oh, yes, I'll get all the costs.
Okay.
Do
Well, I
other,
was actually gonna,
go Trish.
okay. I was actually gonna say, it's entirely possible that if you pay for the rear ads, they may include interior ads. We being Triage, actually have ads on the back of 2 buses running through the end of the year. And they included interior ads for us. And so what I have found in working with Connect Transit is if you identify what your budget is and what your primary goal is, they sort of put together a package. I mean, much like advertising with anyone else too. So if you talk to them and give them sort of what we're looking for and a price range, I find that you actually come out with more than if you look at all of those things priced separately. So we can probably get more bang for our buck that way too.
Thank you so much. Okay, now I'm going to throw it out there. What other, we talk about a lot of marketing venues, but and right now we're kind of talking about the big ones. So kind of thinking about, again, the bigger ideas like the billboards or the buses. Do any of you have other ideas about locations or, where places we should be making sure we have big, bold messaging?
I think that, since we're gonna, or Corey, you're gonna talk about this in the behavioral health priority action team, we're still doing those twice a month social media posts. And so this could be part of that whole process for the, those months and Chestnut creates those, and then we send them out, and then all the social service agencies post them on their social media. So it's kind of like a web. And so we could do that too.
Thank you, because we talked about that whole piece of it, because again, many people have those cell phones, and that's probably one of the chief places that they get information.
Maureen, go ahead.
So most of this advertising is in Bloomington Normal. I'm sorry, I've got this feedback. It's very annoying. If we had volunteers, we could do posters, colorful posters, and take them out to the rural areas. Most rural communities have like a Casey's or a post office or somewhere where we post, 8.5 by 11 colorful poster. And we found at the health department that those really do make a difference in getting the word out. And the only cost to that is whoever is driving out there. But you do have to have volunteers to help do that. And also locally.
Tricia knows a lot about posters because of the behavioral health forum. So go ahead, Tricia.
Well, Maureen's comment actually prompted a very different thought, but to reach the rural communities, and especially, and I think she makes a great point, but also thinking through, especially the time frame we're targeting this, if COVID ramps up as anticipated and as we're already seeing, and people are not going into businesses as much, or even perhaps engaging in the way that they have, thinking through whether they'll see posters. But what it made me think of are, I mean, I wish I had a different thought of what to call them right now, other than the big like 4x4 like election signs. And so it's more costly than posters, but I wonder if it would reach more people, be more visible, and be mindful of the fact people may not be going into businesses. And I mean, at least for election stuff, there are generally a lot of farmers or landowners who are willing to put those out, especially if we're looking at a point in time where they're not planting or have crops in the field. So it's sort of like a rural billboard, so to speak. But it's a thought that came to mind while Maureen was sharing her thought about getting out in the posters. It just costs more.
Tricia, I think that's brilliant, because you know what also is, if you could tap into some of the people that were responsible for getting some of those election posters up around rural areas, and just ask if they would be willing to do it again for this cause, you'd already have your volunteers or whatever. That's an awesome idea. Wow. Well,
and I don't know if they would do it. I know, I actually don't know if Boppy prints the 4x4. I can't even think of the material anymore that they use. And I don't know if Boppy does those, but I know their social service free printing day is coming up soon. So they might be a resource to look at to see if they'd be willing to print at no cost. But there is another sign place in town, actually, in the old Midwest Food Bank building right next to Boppy. Whatever the name of that sign company is that I can't think of in this moment. They do those signs, and since they're local, it may not hurt to talk to them to see if they would donate the signs at cost or a reduced cost. So there might be some ways to use some local agent or some local businesses to print them at a either free or reduced rate, rather than going an online route.
And in fact, there is Darnell Printing is very local and has been for a long time. They're good to work with. I do know that they and others are hurting quite a bit because people do so much online. But I think maybe we might get several locals to help us, perhaps give it to us at cost plus a little bit more.
so you're saying Boppy, Darnell, and do you know the name of the one you're thinking of? You're saying it's where the old Midwest Food Bank used to be? Yeah.
Yeah, I can look it up and send you an email when the meeting's over. I just can't remember the name of it right now.
Okay.
So,
and again, I think that's great, because again, then we can put those in any neighborhood. And again, we can get those to the west side and some of the other places we've identified as really, wanting to be targeted areas. So that's great. Okay. Anybody else have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Make a suggestion from Maureen. The other night, Maureen, I was on a Zoom call and it was real staticky, and a friend who was looking at the Zoom, like I am looking at you right now, you have 2 sites up. And when I got rid of my one site, then the static went away. So I don't know if that'll help you, but anyway, so I was just going to say that all the outlining areas have township offices. And those would be, public entities that people go by on a regular basis, and would, I would think, would be very willing. The other thing for the outlining areas are the grain elevators. They're not quite as busy as they were the last few weeks, but they'll still be busy for a little while.
Great idea. And I think we talked about VFWs, libraries, post offices, all of that in small rural towns. So that would be fabulous if we could. I think that's brilliant, Tricia, that we could get that signage and put it up. Because, I mean, let's face it, think about all the signs we all saw during the election. I mean, that they really were impactful. So yeah, great.
Yeah. The issue becomes just finding volunteers who are willing to go out and do it.
So
because
that's
it is a lot of legwork.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Do we know if, Judy, you might know this because you help with campaigns. Do you know if there's a way to track who some of the volunteers were that did that in different communities? And if so, could we, I mean, that would be a network we could start with to just
Well,
ask if they'd be willing to do it for this purpose.
In terms of campaigns, usually there are some volunteers that have a list of people that have already said that they would let you put it on their property. Challenging some of those folks to help us out, I think would be a good idea. And there are those lists, but again, you do have to make that, as Maureen said, that contact to be sure you're putting it on property with their approval.
Right. But I mean, it gives us such a great list to start with. That's really good. Okay.
And most of the people on the list I'm talking about would be of a particular party, and I'd be obviously very willing to talk with people, friends I have of another party, and we can do some coordination.
I think you probably are the right person to be in charge of starting that off, because you really do have those kind. But I mean, if you're willing to kind of, blow on those embers and get it going, that would be awesome.
We can start something there, and I know, just to put out there, again, the messaging. I want us, if we're talking about messaging at some point, we want to be consistent, and I'm not sure that we know what message we want to until we've talked with Pat, put on these signs. But I'd be willing to sort of start looking at what are our options out there for getting signs for, either yard signs, or people have mentioned 4x4s or 3x4s. So I'll make some calls on that one.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Okay. Any other comments along this line? Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, so it for the cause.
Talk a little bit more. Flesh that out a little bit for us.
So as far as like creating some of the signs, working with having some of the signs made. And so we're talking about placing those signs in different places. And so if we did some type of project where we could sell some of those signs to community members, or give some of those signs to community members, like sponsors, or some type of, with it having this cause. So then you can see the signs, like campaigning. So then you can see the signs throughout, even in the rural areas or in the fields, or see some of the signs too in people's different yards. And so then you have access to being able to see them, but then also you see like, oh, my neighbor is supporting this. So there's that mutual support, that peer support, that it's okay to ask for help for the signs.
Okay. So in other words, that somebody's name as a sponsor, they would pay for the bill, pay for the sign and put it up, and their name would be on it as kind of sponsoring the campaign. Is that what you're saying, the marketing campaign?
I would hope we wouldn't have to necessarily like add more to the sign as far as like campaigning or as far as sponsoring. But if there was signs available, so for example, there were signs available like marketing that somehow that these are the signs and you can put them in your yard. And so then people putting them in their yard, but not so much. Yeah, I wouldn't say a sponsor, because we could still pay for the signs. But then there could be, whether it's them buying the signs or
a donation. We have this campaign. Once we get it together, we make known that we have individual yard signs and we want to get them out, and but not make it mandatory. But we do accept donations. But I think that that's where some sponsorship, and there might be, again, businesses have been hurt so badly with the pandemic that I don't know how much, help there will be in terms of actual dollars from businesses. But people, individuals might be willing to make some donations.
But again, we might be able to defray some of the costs with some of these dollars that have been set aside for the marketing campaign too. We could perhaps pay for a percentage or something. So that's
And we were
okay.
just, right, and if there's different ways as, I don't know if sponsoring is the correct word for it. Because then I know that sometimes involves like exchange of money, but also then having so some of our partners, like if they can share this on their social media, or if you can pick up the signs in different places. So like rurally, in the rural areas, maybe like at the fire departments do a lot of social gatherings. And I know it's COVID and it's not a social gathering, but it could be something where you can just come pick up a sign from outside of the fire department or the post office. But then there would be ways even with that fire department, like sharing that on their social media. So I don't know if sponsoring is the correct word or not, but just as far as like advertising and reaching out to different areas to help get the word out, and then being able to see some of that. And then real quick also, I'm not sure, so Gabby Bonte is with us, and I'm not sure if Gabby, I'm not sure if you have the ability to speak or not, but she did put in the chat box, have we explored radio ads to reach more people who are not leaving their homes?
I am not aware. Does anybody know, Joan, I think you were part of that initial campaign. Did they do radio spots for the coping campaign? Do you know?
I don't know, because David Taylor picked it up. We just designed the logo or the campaign, and then gave it over to the United Way for them to then put it out.
I think that makes sense to look at that. Go ahead, Judy.
No, just the radio advertising is pretty costly. And I don't know if they're still giving reduced rates for certain entities. At one time they did, but it is costly. But we could look into it.
I know one station has been very good about sponsoring the Festival of Trees for years, doing really, really it basically as an in-kind donation. And I wonder if we could see if that radio station would be willing to get involved, because clearly they have a mission to do that, but we should probably reach out to several. So, okay, thanks, Gabby. Great idea. And Joan, let me ask you, as about, getting that messaging out through social media, and your chestnut person is the one that creates those social media that then get sent out to the other social service agencies. Could those messages be sent to businesses too, if we got a list of businesses that would be willing to put it on their websites, or universities or whatever?
Yeah, because we could, if we had an email list of whoever you wanted to send it out to, we can send it out via constant contact. And we can even use the same visual that we used the first time. If we're not going to change that, we already have it.
Thank you. Boy, that'd be great if and that might be something United Way or Chamber of Commerce, or again, some of the rest of you might have other ideas about, what entities could we tap to get those emails, to see if they're interested in, getting those social media messages out. Any other ideas about who to tap into to see if we can, get a list of just wide variety of entities that might do those social media posts?
Well, I would think the hospital wellness program would be willing to send it out.
There's the whole State Farm connection where they send out events and opportunities for volunteering. It's their blast out that they do. I believe Country has one also. Pawnee Otten, who's the person I think he's the president of the board of United Way right now. I think he's like the community person also at State Farm, the Willie Brown sort of person of the old days. He would probably know how to access that. And certainly United Way itself has all of the social service agencies in some database somewhere for when they send information out. So, and they have their newsletter thing that goes out about what they're doing each month. And as far as the radio stations, now if you get interviewed on the radio and have interviewed for like a little short thing about what you're doing, those things go on their website. Those interviews are able to be accessed at a later time. So maybe they won't give us free advertisements, but maybe they would, once we know what we're talking about and have it all together, and then maybe we could be interviewed. Corey could be interviewed by all the local radio.
I would recommend others, but that's a great idea though. I think Mary Campbell would be a wonderful interviewee.
And we have I forget the name of it, but it's a primarily Black radio station in town as well. And then there's the Catholic radio station that goes on, 89.5, I think. So there are a number of ones that go out into the more rural communities and out to a broader audience than we may be able to access.
What about an op-ed piece?
I think Tricia should be interviewed.
I do too. She's wonderful at it. Yes, op-ed, is that what you're saying, Joan? An op-ed, that's a great idea. Yeah. Once, as Mary's saying, once we really have it nicely packaged. Schools would be great too, to have it on all the school websites. Although does it get sent to the schools now? Joan, do you know, from Chestnut? Because it should be on school websites because there's so many people.
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's worth, I don't know that it goes to the school, so I think it's worth having a conversation with the superintendent.
Okay. And tell me again, who's in charge of that? Who does the Chestnut media post?
Celeste Brennan.
Celeste Brennan. Okay. Okay. Any other things we haven't thought about? This is, oh my gosh, this is, wow. Great stuff.
I know that the Catholic churches all have a weekly bulletin.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be worth it. I don't know how much it is to advertise in those bulletins, but it might be good to have a little blurb in the book. I know I read them cover to cover. So.
We talked about having insert, Judy and I and others had talked about having an insert that goes into, all the church bulletins, as well as I know people are already putting stuff into the food baskets that go out. And I'm thinking about the kids, they get the food backpacks at the schools. And now that the kids are back in person, I'm hoping those food backpack things are back in, so we could be sticking them in there too. And I did find, I've been looking and looking, I did find the full page ad that the McLean County Interfaith Alliance put in the Panagraph in June. And it lists all of these churches, including like hospital, what do you call the hospital people that are the pastors at the hospital? I can't think of the right word.
Chaplain.
Chaplain, pastoral care people. So it had a huge long list of that, and I do have that here now. So even knowing that it's called McLean County Interfaith Alliance, that gives us some people that they would be willing to, we could reach out to get in their bulletins. And that was synagogues and Islamic faith and all. It's really diverse. So that'll be good as a starting point too. Go ahead, Maureen.
You're trying to reach families with kids. There's a Macaroni Kid emailed
I forgot about that.
newsletter. It's either $35 or $50 a month, so it's not very expensive to put an ad along the side. And then Melissa likes me, so she usually gives me like I can do a article that can go in one of those during the month. I'm not sure how far out she's sold right now because there seems to be a whole lot of national ads on her newsletter, but we could try for that, and at least get an article in there about what we're
That is
trying to
great idea.
do.
That is really popular. I do know that's a very popular publication. And by the way, I love
And
your
it's
cat.
very inexpensive. Oh, he likes, when I'm talking to nothing, he likes to sit on me to make sure that I don't look foolish, like I'm talking to him.
You know, Corey, as I'm listening to, this is a great discussion. I think the list is endless. We've got a number of entities, both our churches and places like Boys and Girls and Western Avenue. And a lot of those places might have either something they hand out routinely to families, or maybe they have a website. So I think probably, hopefully, and I can help with this, we should be putting together a list, because I think we're going to have a very long one of possibilities for getting this message out in a not a very costly manner. There are some things that are going to cost, but I think there are other places we could really blanket this community.
And Joan, do you feel like there's any limit to the numbers you can send that out to?
In terms of the social media posts, Corey? No, I think, whoever.
If you get an email address, you're going to send it, right, Joan?
As long
Would
as
be
they've
bad.
given us permission to email them,
Yeah, exactly.
then we can put them on the email list.
And
That
how
would
often,
be fabulous. Boy, that's such a low cost way of reaching so many people. Go ahead, Judy. I didn't.
how often do you do that, Joan?
Well, we have an email list that we have of all of our referral sources around the state that we send out through Constant Contact, whenever we have open beds or new information to share. So I would think we would be able to set it up in the same way, where we just do a list of emails and send it out through Constant Contact.
Good, thank you.
Okay, anything else? We have covered a lot of ground on this topic. Anything else on social media and just messaging in general about formats and places, and kind of a stream of volunteers to figure out a way to not only have the signage, but get it in the right places? Any other ideas? That might be something that, a high school, some of the schools have, some of the rural schools have community service hours for graduation. We could maybe tap into some of those.
It used to be that Central Catholic had that too. I don't know if they still do, but they would have, that was a requirement.
Yeah, and so maybe that would be something kids would be willing to take on, to put those out there. Okay, just a thought. Oh my gosh, I hope, who's taking notes, Amy? I hope somebody's captured all this. I'm writing frantically, and I'm sure when I get done, I won't be able to put it all into sensible. So that'll be, okay. Since we've got Maureen here, let's move, and actually, Joan, you're involved, I think, also in mental health first aid. So talk to us about mental health first aid. And Maureen, I know you had put together some numbers for trainer of trainers, and I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. And thank you, Mary. I didn't realize I was on there twice, so I've closed one, and it seems to have helped with the feedback. So ideally, we would like to do a trainer for near the end of January or early February for adult trainers. We've checked with National Council. As long as we had a National Council partner, it would be $24,000 to train 16 people, which 16 people in Central Illinois would be a pretty big number. Generally beating the bushes and really beg pleading with people. We generally get about 8 to 10. And this year, we're a little worried because people seem to have more on their plate with COVID. So I'm really not sure, if we go for early February, I'm not sure how many local people we could get. But the positive part is that we can sell the other seats to Illinois folks or even national folks. So we wouldn't lose money by having, less than 16 local people be in the course.
Maureen, I'm gonna interrupt you just for a second to make sure that everybody knows part of why you're pushing the trainer of trainers is because some of the people that were initially trained to be trainers have dropped away from, and so now you said there's only about 6 active trainers right now in the county?
Adult trainers, yeah.
Adult trainers. How many youth trainers are still available?
7 or 8.
Okay.
And the problem is they just changed the curriculum, and it is a good, solid 10-hour commitment to learn the new curriculum. And there's another, people haven't seemed to have the time to put in that 10-hour commitment to learn the new curriculum. So we can still use the old curriculum, but that has to be in person. We're not allowed to use the old curriculum and use Zoom or any other electronic medium to teach that class. It has to be in person. And so some of those folks can still teach, but until they're up to date with the new curriculum, they can't use any electronics to for teaching. It can't be in distance.
Online or hybrid training. So can I check? So everybody that's currently trained has to be retrained if they're going to do anything remote or hybrid, correct?
All but 3 of us, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why we're kind of in dire straits with needing to get some additional trainers.
Yeah.
And you said too, we could partner on the cost with Area Health Education Center, AHEC?
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Because they have set aside in their budget at least $12,000 to help pay for a course. And so in the National Council did say that the course, all of the instructor trainer courses for 2021 would be trained in the new curriculum. So that would be a positive. So we are looking for about $12,000 to help us with that.
And that would pay just for the adult, that would just pay for adult trainer of trainers. It would not pay for youth adult trainer of trainers, right?
Correct.
All right. Oh, sorry. Jeff and I are trying to coordinate volumes and so Maureen, we also Taylor Davis, behavioral health specialist, looked into what it would cost for the health department to be have a membership in the National Council for Behavioral Health, and it's actually pretty cheap for us to become members of the Illinois Association for Behavioral Health, because they would just be looking at the budget that we have for mental health first aid and not the entire budget of the health department. And if you have that membership with the Illinois Association for Behavioral Health, then that automatically gives you a membership for National Council. So we would be able to If, so as far as like with the mental health first aid training, if it's feasible or helpful, we would be able to do that. If it's approved for us to have this membership, we would be able to do the trainings independently. We wouldn't have to partner with another agency.
Well,
I bet you,
Chestnut has always been the partner because we're national council members and we've never had a problem with doing that.
okay. So
The other thing
you'll
too is
give
like
us
as far
two
as-
options.
Sorry, Maureen. So the
Go
other
ahead.
thing, as far as us becoming members, isn't because there's perceived or any conflict between partnering between the health department and Chestnut. But there's other benefits of us becoming members of both of those councils. There's a lot of benefits of us becoming members of those councils. And again, it's just built off of our mental health first aid budget. And so it would be very, very cheap for us to become members. And so it's just an option that if we do become members, we have other benefits, including the mental health first aid.
Okay, but Joan, what you're saying is you already are a member, Chestnut's already a member of that, so we already get the discount because you're a part of the mental health first aid coalition for the community.
And
Right.
we're willing to continue to do that. Now, whether you guys decide that you want to become members of IABH and, therefore National Council is, up to you guys.
Right, I agree. Okay.
Thank you, Joan. That's nice.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate, Joan, that Chestnut's always been a big player in making all this happen. Okay, so Maureen, basically, and when would you want to do that trainer of trainers? And again, if COVID's going to kick way up, I mean, do we all agree, just like Tricia reminded us, why are we putting stuff inside buildings if people are not going to be going inside buildings for a while? So, I mean, should we just assume that we should be offering this training remotely or at least hybrid for the next 6 months?
So yes, that training, instructor training is only available remotely, and it probably early February would be the earliest that we could pull it all together, and it's a 5-day commitment, not 5 days in a row, but and it's totally online. So the people who would learn that would also learn some online training skills, because they would not only be participants, but they have to teach a section of that curriculum using Zoom, putting participants into chat rooms and things like that. So they would already have a little bit of experience. And then as far as mental health first aid goes, our collaborative met a couple weeks ago and we created a calendar for 2021 where we have right now one course per month on that calendar. Now, some of our folks really wanted to have some in-person options. And like we scheduled a course this month for the 19th, but looking at our numbers right now, we're going to cancel that course. There's just no way that would be responsible for us to hold that course. And so in 2021, most of the courses that we have, well, it's 50-50. They're either completely virtual or there's some virtual and some in a portion of that class that's in person. But again, we would have the option of switching the in-person part to totally using Zoom based on what our numbers look like. The nice part about it is that with the new curriculum, the in-person portion is now 6 hours instead of 8. And so it's a little bit less time in person, but I think after you get, past an hour or two, your risk is still pretty high up there. So we can change those in-person ones to virtual without a lot of trouble.
Okay,
And then with more, yep.
I'm sorry, just to kind of nail it into a little package, because I still want us to spend time talking about the community liaisons and neighborhoods,
Okay.
which will help take the messages out by people that are, peers. So Maureen, I think what you're saying is we want to, if this group has consensus that we want to recommend to the Board of Health, that we use some dollars to pay, to share in the cost of a trainer of trainers. And we would be talking about, if we just do the adult one, that would be $12,000. Our share of the trainer of trainers would be $12,000, correct?
Right.
And then we could also buy a bank of seats. So in other words, because Maureen, you've shared with me that the cost for remote participants is actually more than in person. And so that's $29.95?
It's $24 right now.
$24
Yeah.
for somebody who is going to participate. That's what their cost is for the materials and the seat. And so we were thinking that we would not want to pick up the entire cost of a participant's fee, because we all believe that if people pay a little bit, they're probably a little bit more invested. And so if we tried to keep the cost per person to $10 to $12, then we would make up the difference. So we would be paying roughly $12 per person, and we could buy a bank of seats in the upcoming trainings throughout 2021. So I guess that's my question is, how many seats, knowing that we would be paying about $12 a seat, we can decide how many seats we want to buy ahead of time. And any thoughts on that? Should we say, obviously 50 times 12 is what, 600?
Yeah.
70, let's see, 75 was, you had it figured out, Maureen, I gotta find it. 75 was about 1,796. So we just have to decide, and again, I don't think we have to decide the exact amounts, but I want you to have a sense of what the costs are. So do we have consensus that it would be wise to pay for half of a trainer of trainers course? And my concern too is mental health first aid for youth. Do we feel like, how are we going to get that covered, and how urgent is that need? And I guess I'd throw that out to all of you. Do any of you have a sense of what's going on with the need for mental health first aid for youth training?
I got I got a commitment from 2 of our youth trainers that they are going to do the new curriculum so that they can help with the youth. So I think that we'll be okay. We offer youth at least 4 times a year, and they're never full. But then again, if we can start working with the school systems again, maybe we can have more. But I do have a commitment from at least 2 instructors that they're going to do the new curriculum.
So we don't need to pay for a trainer of trainers for youth, correct?
Not at this time.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So then do we have consensus that it would make sense to recommend to the Board of Health to use some of the dollars to pay roughly $12,000 for our half of a trainer of trainers training session, and then to also buy a bank of seats? Any questions about that or comments? Those of you that have been part of this, anything you throw in there?
I think it makes sense.
Roughly, what do you think for a bank of seats? And that again might be the negotiable part. But but Maureen, do you have a sense that, again, based on what kind of a response you've had, if people knew that they could do it remotely and safely, do you think we'd get a better response if people can do it online and do it, comfortably in their own home or whatever?
We would like to at least start out buying 75 seats, yes.
So I guess we can do the math later and just so you know, everybody, that would be whatever amount. So should we say that what we would recommend to the board is consideration of purchasing seats up to 75, and then can be decided anywhere between 0 and 75 for seats, knowing that that would be at $12 a piece. So the most we would spend on a bank of seats would be about $1,800 in addition to the $12,000. So altogether, we would say $12,000 for the trainer, half of the training, and then another $1,000, basically $800 for a sum total of, $13,800 possibly to go to mental health first aid. Up to that amount. Would you think
And we would be eternally grateful.
is that something that you would think that we should bring to the board's attention? And can I just have a show of hands so that we have consensus on that? Okay, thank you. Okay. So then we have about a half hour left to talk about, if everybody's, I feel like we should do a stretch break. This is really tough.
Yes, and can I,
Your attention. Go ahead, Amy.
oh, sorry, can I just give a quick update too, as far as time? We do have a hard stop at noon, so we have 25 minutes left. And we have to go through the action items at the end for documenting purposes, but just wanted to let everyone know we do have a hard stop in 25 minutes, but we need time to do the action items too.
Thank you, Judy. You all remember from the last time we talked about, and I don't know, Amy, did you include that in the minutes, the list of entities that we had talked about is perhaps drawing community liaisons from? I think I've got it here. I got it here.
Okay, so I only included the 211 picture of the campaign in the packet and then the agenda.
Okay, so the groups we talked about pulling community or neighborhood liaisons from last time. So this is what I need to have you help narrowing down to 4. So, and I'm sorry you don't have it in front of you, but it's faith-based groups. And we had particularly talked about maybe, Mount Pisgah, St. Mary's, Wayman, African Methodist, Episcopal. And then we talked about parents of children in WIC, Head Start, Boys and Girls Club, YWCA, YMCA, etc. Advocacy organizations like Black Lives Matter, Not in Our Town, etc. Mid-Central Community Action clients. School districts looking at their homeless liaisons through that McKinney-Venter Homeless Assistance Act. Rural communities, which we've talked about. Which we talked about maybe going through rural fire chiefs, contacts through Tri-County Special Education Association, social workers who are in those communities a lot, VFWs, et cetera. A 7th was Western Avenue Community Center. And again, St. Mary's works really closely, St. Mary's Church works really closely with Western Avenue. And then the 8th was Area Agency on Aging for seniors. And then barbers and hairdressers. So did you capture all those? What's ones that bubble up for you guys as a place for us to start to identify, pulling a liaison from, and then that they would be our communicator to these organizations and their communities. Anybody want to throw out their top 2 or 3?
Corey, and I wonder if if you could review again for us the individual's responsibility that we're trying to recruit.
Doing that, sorry, I'm sorry. We had talked about that these liaisons for a stipend, and last time we had just thrown out $1,000 for a stipend, and the stipend would mean that they would be responsible for certain deliverables. And the deliverables would be that probably they would have to make a certain number of contacts within their particular community, however we define community. It could be a geographical community, it could be an organizational community, an advocacy group community, whatever. So their role would be that we would provide them training. And when I'm saying we, I'm really meaning Amy and Taylor would be the ones that would they would be working with. And these 4 liaisons representing each of their entities would be given support and training in messaging, in helping to identify who would be key contacts that they would be working through to get the messaging out. They might be the ones that help us get those signage out. They might be the ones that make contacts to get the signage out. They would be the ones that maybe if they knew of different community or organizational activities, they would be, marketing within any activity they knew that was going on in their particular community. They would identify the leaders within that community to help distribute the messaging. They would kind of just be the point person that community would be told, if you have questions about, anything related to behavioral health, this is your point person. And they would keep track of that. I mean, we would do some data collection they would keep track of how many contacts, who, where, when, what, and feedback they receive, kinds of questions they get, they would also seek to, figure out what are the barriers within a community and help us, figure out that. That's just a short list. I could go on and on, but did that help, Judy?
So they're making these contacts and they're identifying leaders and how to get the message out. The message being?
It would basically be using the 211. It would basically be it's the same as the social media message. It would be like how, if you are, down and, depressed, scared, anxious, needing resources, this is where you go. So, a pretty simple message.
Okay.
Pretty simple message, yeah.
They're going to be our link then into various communities, for example, that we may not feel we're reaching now. Okay.
Exactly. And also helping us figure out what are the stigma, what are the specific barriers, stigma pieces that are getting in the way for their particular community, and how can we get around that? So they would kind of be the trusted messenger, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So first of all, I guess I should throw out, are we still interested in pursuing that idea, and pros and cons of that? I'll throw that out for people to respond to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead, Maureen.
I still like the idea. And I like the idea with finding somebody from a faith community. And then the barbershops really appealed to me. I think it would be difficult to find somebody in the schools, to find a person who is with lived experience in the school system. Maybe somebody, who works in the school system might be an easier, it might be easier for them to go between schools to really get that word out. But a person who with lived experience would be more likely to be able to get that word out within their own school, but I don't know how they would do that amongst other schools.
Okay, thank you. So Maureen's putting out there that she's putting out their faith-based organization and barbers and hairdressers. Who else, anybody else have some of those lists I read? Who else is coming forward for some of you?
Well, I think the places that we've listed, like Head Start and Better Birth Outcomes and WIC, we're looking at families there, so we're looking at reaching more than a person.
Okay, anybody else have some priorities? So we've got 3 priorities so far: the faith-based group, the barbershop hairdressers, and the young parents of young children with, that have some identified needs through WIC and Head Start and Boys and Girls Club, et cetera. Anybody, any other entity come forward that I read off? And again, I'll just remind you that would be advocacy organization like Black Lives Matter, Not in Our Town, Mid-Central Community Action Clients, Western Avenue Community Center, Rural Communities, Area Agency on Aging. And I'm going to throw out to you, Joan, is ROSC doing much with rural communities?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I can find out and get back to you, Corey. Or I'll have Angie actually get back to you.
Be great, because we might be able to use that vehicle for rural communities if there's already a presence there. Hearing no one else coming forward with a priority, should we just go with those 3, or should we go ahead and pick a 4th one? Because those were the ones that were named were kind of my top ones, because I think they get to, some people that, although again, I worry about barbershops and hairdressing, afraid they're going to be closed down, but I guess that would mean people they have more time on their hands. So maybe that works in our favor. I
Or
don't know
maybe-
Comments too in the chat box.
I was going to suggest, Corey, maybe we revisit this question after we figure out all the ways that we're going to be able to get the information out. Once we know if we have access to all of the systems through Chestnut and buses and radios. I mean, once we know that, maybe we will be able to identify an area that we haven't yet touched.
Great suggestion. Okay, any other comments on this? But you still, Mary, do you still think we should go ahead and look at the 3 we just talked about today, or you think we should kind of put this on pause till until we kind of have everything else better fleshed out?
I think we maybe put any advertisement publicity on pause until we have a very clear message. So we don't want to have to take something back that we put out. So I don't, what they say, put the cart in front of the horse. I think we just have to know what our message is and then identify those specific ones through liaisons or advertisement or whatever. But I'm not sure we're quite yet there.
No.
Okay.
And I agree. That's why I've mentioned messaging a couple of times. And David reminded us of the need for consistency too.
So do we think, so you did all get a copy of the 211 coping graphic. Does that do it? Is that sufficient, or do we need to expand that in some way? I mean, again, I don't think we want to go away from it if it became the graphic that people started associating with 211, but do we want to expand it in some way, or do we want to just leave it as it is and just start making sure people understand exactly what that, I mean, is it clear enough what that's selling? Because for me, it's not quite, it's good and I like it, but I'm still not sure they know what's going to happen if they call 211.
Well, it says get connected, get answers. I mean, that's what we're offering you. If you call it, you're going to get connected and you're going to get answered.
So do we feel it's sufficient as it is? Or do we feel like it needs some tweaking?
Well, I think adding, if the group thinks we should change the message in some way, believe we have to delete something that's on here.
Right.
It already, you know, has a fair number of characters and graphics on it. And
Yeah.
we've all been reminded that people will glance at this and maybe pick up a half a dozen words and 211. That may be all that they remember.
Yeah, it would need to have our health department logo on it too.
Well, we've got some logos here, United Way, 211, and
Was Oz on there? Was Oz on there?
no, it's
Just United Way and 211.
Yeah, and so
We
that
didn't
raises,
put any providers on it.
if there's any, if are we talking about
Oh, okay.
what?
Don't we want it to be real universal? So do we want to, I mean, other than PATH, which is
Yeah.
where they're called, I mean, I feel like PATH should be on there, but, and maybe United Way, if it's kind of, if people have a connection to United Way through this whole thing, which they've certainly stepped up, but I don't know that
I
we want
see.
to list every single entity.
Well, and
Okay, I got it.
are we talking about anyone that helps with the funding as we go along, funding of getting this message out?
Yeah, maybe.
If you know, the health department, other entities, we could take up some valuable space here that we may not want to cover with that.
Okay, I withdraw that.
And so I don't know how proprietary United Way is with this.
Okay.
Now, did you all, Chestnut develop this this graphic? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
We did.
And so if there are to be any changes, it has to be reviewed and gone back through the Chestnut entity, or?
You know, we did it gratis for this project, so we're not really like, we don't feel like we own it, other than we can make changes to it if we need to. We determined, the group determined at the time that we put the United Way on there because the United Way was funding it. And so, and the 211, you know, PATH, of course, but we purposely didn't put providers on there because you could take up the whole space with just logos. So
That's right. And
Plus you could turn off somebody if they didn't like a particular provider, you know, you could say, oh,
and
I
I
don't
think
want
that in a way, United Way kind of legitimizes it. You know, call 211. Is this some quack that's putting this out there? United Way is a recognized community service organization, and it maybe lends some credibility. And we need that. We need this to appear to be very legitimate.
Okay, I'm looking at the time, and I know we've got a few things we've got to get consensus on. I would propose that we talk about this with the Behavioral Health Priority Action Team when we meet next Tuesday. We talk specifically about the messaging. We have everybody look at it again. Is everybody okay with that, to kind of get, because I think everybody kind of bought into that and you know, got behind that. And so I think it would be great for that group to look at it again and say, does this still meet our needs? I wonder too if we should have, bring it before maybe a couple of, you know, almost like a, what do you call it? Put it out in front, focus groups, put it out in front of a couple entities and just ask them if they feel like as possible consumers, would it speak to them? Like maybe Maureen have, you know, or Amy have WIC parents look at it, or whoever's maybe got something coming up that's more of a client group, have them look at it and give us some feedback on it. Might not be a bad idea. So get some focus group stuff, and we'll work on that. Go ahead, Judy. Sorry.
I like that because it gives us a different perspective than the agencies. You know, to have some consumers, potential consumers look at it.
So when we do the Behavioral Health Priority Action Committee next week, I will ask Sally Gambacorta if we can have a slot of time on that where people could talk about if they've got any consumer groups that are meeting in the near future, that they could run that by them and get feedback from them. Does that sound reasonable?
Mhm. Good.
Okay, all right. So now moving into, we need to approve the minutes of October 12th. Do I have a motion to approve the October 12th minutes?
I so move, and I do have one comment when we get there.
Okay. Do I have a second? Thank you, Trish. Okay, so moved and seconded, and go ahead, discussion, Judy.
Oh, and it's a pretty minor point, but it does indicate near the end of the minutes that I'm going to send the committee members a list of the high-risk areas and ask the committee to assist with. I didn't recall that I was responsible for that, so obviously I haven't done it, and so that I just want to let the record show that that has not been done.
Okay. Appreciate that. Okay. All those in favor say aye, or I'm sorry, do we have to take a roll call, Amy?
Yes.
Although we really do? Okay, all right,
Yep.
go ahead.
Okay. Judy Buchanan,
Aye.
Corey Tello,
Aye.
Trisha Malott,
Aye.
Mary Campbell,
Yes.
and Gabby Bonte. Okay, Gabby, thank you.
And Joan, you are not a voting member. I'm so sorry, I was supposed to let you know, but as a community member, you're not necessarily a voting member right now. So we will talk about that further, but we won't make you vote right this minute. We're talking about action items. We kind of got consensus as we went. Do we need to do that? Because I believe that all we can really do is, again, we only make recommendations to the approving body. We are not the ones that are going to approve these things. We're just recommending that they take them into consideration. So tell me, Amy, what we need to do as far as.
Right. So on the agenda, it is providing advisement. And so if you want to, right, so the consensus earlier wouldn't be a technical action item.
Okay.
So to provide that any of those consensus to the board, then I would imagine it would be an action item, but I'm also not the expert on that.
And do we have to take them, we have to take them individually, right?
Yes.
Okay, and a roll call on each one. Okay, so in 5 minutes, we got to go, gang. Okay, so, and we have to have a motion as well? Or can we just do approval?
Unless you or Judy know something different, I'm assuming everything would be the same as any other
Motion.
open meeting, it would be the same.
Okay, so I need to have a motion of approving advisement to the Board of Health for money to fund mental health first aid as we described it, knowing that it could be up to that amount. Okay, I see a first
Second.
motion, Judy, second, Mary. Okay, any good discussion? Okay, all those in roll call.
Judy Buchanan,
Aye.
Corey Tello,
Aye.
Trisha Malott,
Aye.
Mary Campbell,
Aye.
and Gabby Bonte.
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve advisement to add a warm line at PATH, knowing roughly the cost that we talked about there? Knowing that first we're going to meet, I should say, maybe it's advisement to explore the continuum of warm lines and then determine from
Yeah.
that a potential cost factor. Can we?
It's
make
all
that?
contingent upon the exploration, yes.
Okay, so do I have a motion for that?
So move.
Okay. Judy Buchanan, do we have a second? Mary Campbell seconded, thank you. Any discussion? Are you doing the call? I think we're good. So it's been moved and
Judy
seconded, we're ready
Buchanan.
to do a call.
Oh, aye.
Corey Tello,
Aye.
Trisha Malott,
Aye.
Mary Campbell,
Aye.
and Gabby Bonte.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to approve advisement to the Board of Health for money to pay for the marketing to the billboards through, and it would be probably for 3 to 6 months. So covering, and I gave you a rough idea, do we still feel like we want to recommend to the Board of Health to explore paying for the marketing billboards in the 3 locations that we discussed?
Now, are you wanting to take each platform separately? Or can we just say an amount not to exceed something?
Yeah,
for
let's do it that
exploration
way.
and possible purchase of you know,
1 to 3 billboards. Yeah, should we say that 1 to 3, or just the amount of cost, which would be, I believe, what did I say, $450 a month for at least 3 months to get us through the hardest times, January through March. So 450 times 3 is 1,350. So should we say up to $1,350? I'm gonna put
It's
throw that
your
out there.
intent, Corey, that we only have an advisory recommendation relative to billboards. Are you going to include?
Oh, I see what you're saying. All the costs. Yeah. Okay. So should we actually, should we say that we actually need to say up to, should we say up to $4,000 to cover all of it? Is that too much?
Good
I mean,
idea.
as long as we make it real. Okay. Should we say up to 4,000?
Right. Mhm.
Okay. So do I have a motion for that? So it would actually be a advisement to pay for marketing venues and materials of all types up to $4,000 for 6 months.
Mhm.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Judy move. Do we have a second? Mary Campbell, thank you. Second. Any discussion? Okay. Roll call, please.
Gabby Bonte,
Aye.
Judy Buchanan,
Aye.
Corey Tello,
Aye.
Mary Campbell,
Aye.
and Trisha Malott had to leave, but she did agree prior to signing off.
Right. I'm sorry, the advocacy groups, we have said we're going to, or do we want to, again, kind of keep that in the mix? I mean, bring that forward to the Board of Health as potentially identifying 4 groups to have community liaisons around, but that, and with a possible cost of up to $4,000. But that will be dependent on the messaging and how, as the entire packaging of messaging we've already approved, and then see where the gaps are, and then decide how much we want to put into those community liaisons, up to 4,000.
I just think maybe advising them that we're looking at that. If I'm on the board, I'm going to say, flush that out for me. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So I think we need to have some kind of a description of what it is we will be expecting of these people in exchange for a stipend.
Okay.
I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, so but we're going to advise them about the concept. Sorry, I'm stuttering.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely there. I think we should
Okay.
circle that.
Okay,
And
All right. all right. Do I have a motion for that? Okay, and do I have a second?
Sure.
Thank you, Mary. Okay.
And
any-
just for us to clarify for the minute, or for the minutes, what was the action item again?
That we're going to, the advisement to the Board of Health would be to entertain the idea of community identifying priority community members or liaisons that will help with messaging and stigma reduction for their particular entity or organization.
Hi, honey. Hi, I'm on a Zoom call. Can I call you right back? Okay. No, it's okay. I'll call you back.
So did that do it, Amy? Did that help? So it's just really, at this point, it would be fleshing out the concept of using community liaisons to work with targeted
Yes, that,
populations.
And then can you remind us who motioned it and who seconded it?
I think it was Judy again and Mary again. Okay. Any discussion? And I'm sorry, we're rushing so much here. Okay, all those, it looks been moved and seconded. Okay, go ahead and take the roll call.
Judy Buchanan,
Aye.
Corey Tello,
Aye.
Mary Campbell, sorry, Mary, you cut out there. Mary Campbell,
Yes, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
It's all on.
and
I'll say
Gabby
yes.
Bonte.
Aye.
Okay, so thank you so much. I'm sorry to rush at the end. It seems like this always happens, and we already gave so much time. Thank you so much for your generosity of your time and your ideas, wonderful ideas. I will sort through the minutes along with whoever was it Jeff taking the minutes today, Amy? Whoever took the minutes, and we'll sort out, and then I will, we'll make sure we touch base
Yes.
with each of you about.
Yes,
you know,
and yes, and it looks like we missed action item E. So we just did action item F, but it looks
Oh.
like we action item E. And unless that one is the one that we talked about earlier being on hold. And it looks very similar to action item F.
We did identify 3 right now. We identified Faith, barbershops and hairdressers is the second one, and then parents of children enrolled in WIC, Head Start, Boys and Girls Club, all of those kinds of things.
So
As
we
our
need an
group.
action item on E.
Well, we're just gonna, so that's, I'm not sure how to say that do we agree that the priority is those 3? Do we have a motion on that? With the priorities being a faith-based, barbershops, hairdressers, and the parents of children in WIC, et cetera. Do we have a motion for that?
Is the motion that they be priority in terms of the concept that we're going to share with the board? Okay,
Right. But then,
I'm good. Mhm.
thanks for the clarification. Okay, so you did make a motion, Judy?
Yeah,
Thank you. Do I have a second?
So the emphasis is for that population to be targeted first as liaisons, is that? Oh, okay, second.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for helping clarify. I'm being very muddy right now. I appreciate it. Okay, do we have any discussion on that? Okay, go ahead and do roll call.
Gabby Bonte. I think she had to log off. Judy Buchanan,
aye.
Corey Tello,
Aye.
and Mary Campbell.
Aye.
Okay, again, many, many thanks for all of these fabulous ideas. There is there's so much richness here. I can't even, until I process it, I can't even think about it, but we'll be back in touch with all of you to figure out next steps. And we'll also, again, some of these those of you that participate in the Behavioral Health Priority Action Team meeting, we'll be, talking about some of this there too. And then we'll put all that together and get back out to you. I'm guessing we'll need to have another meeting fairly quickly once we, and then I guess, the Board of Health meeting is next Wednesday, so we'll also get back to you after that meeting too. So we'll have lots to talk about and next steps to create. Okay, anybody else have anything to say?
Yes, very quickly, just to kind of help with the planning of the upcoming meeting, Jeff is going to go ahead and send out a doodle poll for the next meeting. And so the most recent doodle poll did go out until November 30th, and those dates didn't work. And so we're going to try to focus in sometime in December.
Okay, good idea.
Thank you so much. Again, you are an amazing group. I look forward to continuing on until we actually get some really hard, fast products that are out into the hands of our public. And thank you so much. And we'll work on that messaging too, again, next week and get those focus groups. I think that'll be our first step, is the focus groups and the message fine tuned. So
And to all of our champions and our champion chairman, be safe, everybody, and have a good day.
thank you, you too.
You guys motion to end the meeting, please.
Do I have Judy motion? Do we have a second? Mary second. Thank you. Do we have to, we don't have to do a roll call on that.
No, we're done. All right, bye, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.